Duke Ellington once said, "The best place to listen to black music is Newark," and he was probably right. In Ellington's heyday, Newark's Coast District was a jazz mecca, with places like the High Spot, Jump and Jive, and the Sound District drawing some of the best players in the business and some of the luckiest listeners. But Newark's past may also be its future. The New Jersey Performing Arts Center and the Newark Music Project are celebrating Newark's jazz heritage in a concert this month entitled Absolute Jazz, The Lost Jazz Shrines. It will feature the music of the late, great Willie the Lion Smith, a two-fisted stride pianist on par with James P. Johnson and Fats Waller. His full name was as big as his musical ambition. William Henry Joseph Bonaparte Bertoloff Smith grew up in the age of ragtime. Newark's red light district was his home. As a teenager, he played piano and danced the buck and wing in most of its saloons, brothels, and clubs. With his rivals, James P. Johnson and Donald Lambert, Smith made Newark into a cradle of jazz innovation. Jazzmen referred to the pianists as ticklers, and Newark was Tickler's Town. Willie Smith was first called the Lion for his artillery exploits in World War I. The name stuck when he was transferred off the battlefield to play in the black soldiers' orchestras that introduced jazz to Europe. After the war, he became one of the piano kings of the Harlem Renaissance, playing in piano showdowns called cutting contests with James P. Johnson, Fats Waller, and the young Duke Ellington. Though the Lion's piano style is usually classified with Johnson and Waller as stride, the Lion played it all: blues, Dixieland, swing, bebop, even the classics, and kept playing it right into the 1970s. Absolute Jazz, The Lost Jazz Shrines, weaves together the music of Willie the Lion Smith with a dramatic narrative about his life, written and performed by another famous native son of Newark, the poet and dramatist Amiri Baraka. The Lion's music is being performed by a new 15-piece jazz ensemble called the New Orchestra. Here now is the New Orchestra's pianist, Robert Banks, playing a Willie the Lion Smith composition called Fingerbuster. Lost Jazz Shrines is a national consortium of cities like Harlem, Philadelphia, and my hometown, Kansas City, where jazz has been an integral part of their local history. In Newark, Lost Jazz Shrines is a joint effort between the New Jersey Performing Arts Center and the Newark Music Project, whose director, Amiri Baraka, is joining me now, along with pianist Robert Banks. Welcome. Mr. Banks, is that as hard to play as it looks?
It is very difficult to play. It's a challenge to the dexterity of your fingers, and especially if you have arthritis. But it's good exercise because it loosens up all the muscles. And at that time, he had to be inspired by God to play the way he played. Because this is the truth, because the same thing that I learned in my early studies, classical studies, he was already doing what they call contrapuntal music. With the stride in the left hand. He was already playing opposite themes while the right hand was doing something else.
Well, this music was written really to show your chops, exactly what you could do, and kind of as a challenge to other pianists, right?
Well, see, there were, I guess the first person to do a piece like that to really make you have to either put up or shut up was Jelly Roll Morton. He had a piece like that. And then the Lion did this piece, as he says. Gershwin had premiered Rhapsody in Blue. And Gershwin, when he was a young hippie, you know, in those days, he used to go up to Harlem all the time, and he used to sit around, you know, Willie the Lion Smith, James P. Johnson, the great stride pianist from New Brunswick, and Fats Waller, who were the big three. And so when they got an invitation to you know, to see, you know, for the reception on Park Avenue for Rhapsody in Blue, that it sort of ticked him off a little bit. So Willie the Lion goes over to Gershwin, who's playing the piano. He says, "Get up, you tomato. That's a real piano player. Sit down." And then he proceeds to put this on them. You know, so you can see that I was meant as a kind of, you know, a dare-do piece. Now get to this sort of thing, you know. But I think that in those days, the challenging, the cutting contests is what it really comes out of.
And were there cutting contests in these spots in Newark and during the heyday?
Well, Newark was always known as a tickler's town. That was the piano player's town. You had to come to Newark. See, that's where Banks got there. You have to come to Newark. And Duke said this is the best place to listen to black music in the world. So how is the scene in Newark different from Chicago or Harlem? Now?
Well, now and then.
Well, at the turn of the century, early in the 20th century, there were four Tenderloin areas, black entertainment district, major ones in the United States. One was in Hell's Kitchen. This is pre-Harlem. You know, the first black community in New York is Greenwich Village. Then they moved to Hell's Kitchen, then they moved to Harlem. The next was the Levee in Chicago. That was a big one. And there was Barbary Coast in San Francisco. It was run by a black woman named Mamie Pleasant. And then Newark was called the Coast. And on the Coast, they had all of these nightclubs that featured piano players. And in very much, you know, the kind of tradition that produced the Banks. I mean, you might see Willie the Lion Smith, James P. Johnson, Fats Waller, all of those people in one night playing in some of those places.
Mr. Banks, you have a background in gospel. And I believe that Willie the Lion Smith came at least from a religious, God-fearing family. Where's the intersection between gospel music and these hangouts, which certainly had the whiff of the illicit about them?
Well, we were playing the same music, but just with different words. That's all, and the same syncopation. The same, like Thomas Dorsey came along, he was a violin player. He was a blues player. But when he wrote Precious Lord, he changed over into the gospel. And as a result of it, you got the same music, like we've got contemporary gospel today. They think it's new. It's not new because it's playing the same bebop chords that he's been talking about for years and everything. We call them altered chords and contemporary harmony. That's all. As the Eurocentric harmony was a different thing. You only had 4 chords to work off.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, the Lion said that a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of the people in the bars are as religious as anybody else. They just prefer to, you know, take their worship in a different form. Like you're saying, like Bessie Smith, for instance, was a deeply religious woman, even though those blues songs she sang were kind of rough, you know, rough sounding, but still that commitment, you know, what did they say? Your ultimate concern, so to speak, as the preachers used to say, was always of a like kind of dimension.
Well, thanks so much for coming today, Amiri Baraka and Robert Banks.